I will help you if I can, Mrs. Richardson said again, raising her voice. Just let that crazy girl go. Let her go on about her crazy-ass business. Phil glared over at me a moment, suspicious. Yeah. Liana has been over Doris's house. I looked at Phil. Beep. I just told you she did, Phil. Yeah, I can tell, Phil said, getting up and walking over to me. She's been over there. And she told you where this guy she's staying with lives. Hasn't she? Tell the truth. You know where this guy lives. Don't you? No. I've never been over there. Yeah, you have, Doris. You've been over there. No. Tell the truth, Doris. I am telling you the truth. But you lied to me a minute ago. Didn't you? Because I thought you were going to go off on me. Tell the truth, Doris. It shall set you free. I am free, and I don't know where this man lives, Phil. Phil stared hard at me with this blank but murderous expression. Of course you know, he said. Thought about it. I was done with Phil grilling me about Liana's whereabouts. So since Liana was sleeping with my husband, telling me all these lies, why not throw her to the lions? I hate to do this because she is my best friend, I said. But I have to be honest. Before she moved in with this guy, she did stop by my house. And what did she tell you? Phil asked. She was scared, Phil. She said you were after her to kill her. Kill her for what? Like I said before, I'm not gonna hurt Liana. I have no reason to kill her. That's crazy. She said, I forget his name, but she said he has a townhouse somewhere near Bowie. I wanted so bad to tell Phil that it was my husband Liana was seeing, so that he could go over to my house and catch them in bed together. I wanted to set them up. But Preston would have killed Phil. So it was best I continued to lie. All this time she never stayed at your house, Phil said. Not once. Preston wouldn't allow that. Why wouldn't Preston allow it? Phil asked. He's just funny that way. He doesn't like a lot of drama in our home. Phil had a smirk on his face when he nodded his head. Yeah, I remember your husband. He never cared too much for me though. For some reason. Mrs. Richardson snapped me a look, offended. Then back at her son. Why? What did you ever do to him? Preston doesn't have anything against you, Phil. He's just, like I said, he's just funny that way. I turned to Mrs. Richardson, who was still offended, ready to follow me home to fight Preston. He's just quiet. One of those people who don't say much. Yeah, whatever. I can tell the way he used to look at me. He don't like me for some reason. Yeah, well, fuck him too. Mrs. Richardson just shook her head. Phil, I wish you wouldn't talk like that. Ma, I'm sorry. If something happens to my son, I know she had something to do with it. I'll know she had something to do with it. That caught me off guard. Ma, nothing's gonna happen to me. Because I know you, Mrs. Richardson said, with concern in her throat. I can see it in your eyes. You have hate in your heart right now, Phil. And I know you want to wring that girl's neck. If I may ask, why do you feel that way, Mrs. Richardson? Mother's intuition. Just know, Liana is sneaky like that. I wouldn't put it past her to get one of her male friends to jump my son. I was trying to picture Liana doing something like that. I just couldn't see it. Phil, you be careful, I said, and I meant it. Phil looked at me confident. I'm always strapped, Mrs. Richardson said. And this guy she's shacking up with, you don't know. He might be strapped too. He might try to blow your head off for messing with that girl, Phil. You don't know. You just need to stay away from her. Phil turned to me. You want a beer? He asked, heading for the fridge. Sure. Why not? I wasn't a beer drinker like that. But my nerves were bad and my hands were shaking. I figured a beer would calm me. Plus I figured if I got drunk with Phil, he'd finish pouring his guts out about Liana. I wanted all the information about Liana I could get, especially things I didn't know about her. Don't get her drunk, Phil, Mrs. Richardson said, getting up and going into the kitchen to check on the food. She has to drive home. I'll give her some chicken to drive home with. Coat her stomach with some grease. I'm not gonna get her too drunk, Ma, Phil said, handing me a Corona with a slice of lime in it. Then he gave me the most innocent, friendly smile. "We're just going to sit here and figure out how to find Liana," he said, sitting down beside me. I took a sip of the Corona. I loved the taste, especially with the lime. I could hear Mrs. Richardson opening pots and checking the food. "Philip, if you don't stay away from that girl, she's going to mess around and have her male friend try to kill you." "I'm trying to tell you." "Yeah, whatever. If I don't kill him first." "I know she will because she's the type to do something like that," Mrs. Richardson said. I just remembered something as I sipped on the Corona. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Richardson was right. Liana was the type. Back in college, she had some guy that liked her beat her ex-boyfriend into a coma.